Good evening and welcome to Have I Got News For You, and apologies to the millions of viewers who may have read that this week's guests were to be Lord Lawson and Mark Little, as I'm afraid they are. In the news this week, after being forced to spend £17 million to divorce Diana, Prince Charles considers renting a new home in the Swindon area. A brand new format is unveiled to make the National Lottery draw more interesting for Welsh viewers. And in Hendon, the Metropolitan Police unveil their latest tactic in the fight against crime, Operation Shout.
Somebody stop him! Stop him! Stop him!
On Ian Hislop's team, an actor and performer from Australia who was classically trained, unfortunately he was classically trained as a tool fitter, Mark Little. Opposite Mr. Little is the former Mr. Large, an ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, whose new diet book is currently number 2 in the bestseller list, just behind Delia Smith's Guide to Economic Theory. Nigel Lawson. Let's press on with our customary film round. Paul and Nigel, a familiar field for you.
Mm-hmm. Who's that?
It's Peter Thurnham.
There's Paddy Ashdown. Lots of money.
David Willits.
David Willits, he's the guy who's might be in trouble. Virginia Bottomley. This is quite easy so far. Now, which member of the cabinet is that? Last week at the conference, people pay to have breakfast with Virginia Bottomley, didn't they? And there was some fuss earlier on in the year when people were paying £1,000 to have dinner with John Major. So I suppose it's about that.
£100,000.
£100,000. Well, you'd want pudding for that, wouldn't you? Hang the diet.
That's part of the question, certainly, yes.
Well, that's probably part of the answer.
It's part of both, in a way.
It's this, what the newspapers call sleaze, isn't it?
Right, do you not call it sleaze?
No,
Sort of lobbying.
Never happened when I was Peter Thurnham failed to get selected for a safe Tory seat, so he defected to the Liberals and said it was because of the sleaze.
Yeah, do you know the strange link that there is between Paddy Ashdown and Peter Thurnham?
They're brothers.
It's a good guess. It's like
Was one of them adopted and has only realised that Paddy Ashdown is his father? There was a tearful reunion.
Yes. They have they have a bruise on the same fingernail.
They share a fingernail.
That's the most boring piece of news I've ever heard.
Yes.
You're only 5 minutes in. I reserve your judgment.
Yes. Do you know which fingernail it is?
Yes, it's that one there. Because I share it with them.
It's that one. Yes, Peter Thurnham will make an unorthodox Liberal MP as he's in favour of NHS reforms, voted for the poll tax, is against minimum wage and is a big supporter of hanging. However, on the plus side, he has got his own Fair Isle sweater. Ian and Mark.
It's a dog. That isn't. That's Chris Patton. That's another dog. Oh, 2 dogs. That's a hog. Douglas. Oh, hello.
Oh, dear.
Hugh's looking out for police officers. Douglas Hogg wants to stop quarantine on the grounds that a lot of people like Chris Patton want to come back to this country and bring their dogs in without all this stuff about being locked up in case they got rabies. It seems a slightly odd proposal, and Chris Patton's obviously behind it, because he's got these 2 dogs called Whiskey and Soda. Unlike Sir Nicholas Scott, who's got 2 dogs called Whiskey and More Whiskey.
But the whole thing comes from this organisation, Passport for Pets, run by Lady Fretwell.
Does it, Paul?
Yeah. She's a near neighbour of mine, that's how I know.
Yeah, a delightful woman, too.
Yeah, she's lovely.
Yes,
Mary.
Lovely. Yes, Mary. I know Mary well, yes.
Mary's a friend.
Yeah, Mary, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
lovely.
Peter, you'd like her. She's charming.
Yeah, I'm sure she is.
Yes.
This has turned into Richard and Judy.
Yes, and who were the famous faces that are involved in this story?
Well, Elizabeth Hurley has been recruited rather than Hugh Grant, I think.
Danish ambassador.
No.
He's not that famous, is he, really?
But there was a Danish ambassador, because I read that he'd complained because he's put his dog in quarantine and then when the quarantine time was up, they sent him the ashes of his dog in a coffee jar.
Yeah. Instant dog, just add water.
Passports for pets.
Passports for
Passport
pets.
for pets,
There hasn't been a
that's right,
case of
yeah.
rabies in this country.
That's because we got quarantine.
But you know, the whole thing is, you know, there's no reason why, if you go to Europe, that you can't bring your dog back in if it's got a proper passport. And by the passport, it means it has to be sort of like injected with anti-rabies drugs. And the real scandal is there's all these people who run these kennels who charge you 2,000 quid to stick a dog in a tiny little place that's got no daylight and just a concrete floor. They're the people who are against it.
Right.
No jokes, but there we are. It's what's called a full and complete answer.
Yes, yes, and one that will be edited out. Yes. One of the solutions being proposed is passports for pets. So, as if they weren't suffering enough, they'll now have to endure the embarrassment of 10-year-old photos of themselves in purple tank tops. Paul and Nigel, how's this?
Jeff Boycott.
Yeah.
Uh,
James Goldsmith,
James-
that one.
Oh, yes, but this
That's
is
the advertisement the referendum party put in. That's Aspinall, the zookeeper, who's also connected with them, and that's Alan Walters, who I've met before. Right?
Big Buddy?
The connection? The connection is that
He's avoiding the question.
Yes,
all
really,
part of,
is
yeah,
That's strange,
they're all part of the Barmy Army who call themselves the Referendum Party. They've got many problems, one of which is they don't know what question to put in the referendum. So they're going to have to say, what question would you like to have put in a referendum?
And when is the party conference occurring?
Saturday.
In Brighton.
In Brighton, that's where you live, Mark.
It is, I'll be there.
Will you?
No. I'll be in Brighton, but I won't be there with those raving loony people.
Screaming James Goldsmith? Honestly.
He's not one of them, is he?
Thank goodness you're an Australian. You're allowed to make those jokes.
Anyway, Nigel, Sir Alan Walters. I was just wondering if you're still friendly with him, that's all. Or did you not keep in touch?
Well, no, not surprised he's left the Tory party. I don't think he was ever in it.
I remember at the time it was either you or him, and then it was both of you who got out.
It was a bit more... The first part is not quite true, but the second part is totally true. Right.
Sir Alan Walters is best remembered as Margaret Thatcher's economic advisor who clashed with Nigel Lawson. Apparently they couldn't agree on the best way to ruin the economy. Run the economy, that's all I say. Ooh, I thought you were going to throw it over me for a moment. Finally, Ian and Mark, a terminal case for you.
Rome. BA. A whole lot of people on a plane. Flight attendant doing a good job. Oh, yes, it's got wheels, good. Yes, I do know what this is. Well, see those people sitting there with the flight attendant? They've been there for like an hour and a half. And then it was announced that the ground staff in Italy had said, I'm sorry, we're on strike. You can't leave the tarmac. And another hour later, and everyone's getting a bit toey. And a couple of the flight attendants...
Toey?
Toey. A bit, you know, a bit tense.
Oh, tense, right.
A
Sorry.
little bit
right.
tense.
Tense, we understand.
Yes,
Good.
okie dokie.
Right.
Okie dokie meaning yes, I understand. The flight attendants, right, and they said, well, let's get out, and we'll push it ourselves. We'll get it out there. So they didn't have the little gizmo that normally pulls the plane to the runway. So a few members of the, in fact, assembled passenger list went to help the flight attendants, and they pushed it to the runway, and it took off. And they were only an hour late into Heathrow when it could have been 6 or 7 hours. Basically, it was a plane load of scabs.
Yes, a perfect answer. Very good. Well done. 2 points.
Presumably that answer will just be cut out, because you're not allowed to do stories about British Airways on the BBC, are you?
Are you referring to anything to do with this programme?
No, there was just this documentary I was looking forward to on Newsnight about a man called John Gorman. Do you remember him? He was a former policeman who found broken glass in his meal and then suffered a sort of amazing campaign of harassment for the next few years from British Airways. And there was going to be this terrific documentary about it, but it got pulled. Because, well, the suggestion was the Director General is a mate of someone at British Airways. I can't believe that would have been the reason for pulling it.
It's a bloke who runs a buffet counter at Heathrow.
Oh, right. But anyway, that's not the reason. So that'll go out. That's good.
Yes, excellent.
But that bit probably won't.
No. And at 10 o'clock next week, you can see repeats of men behaving badly. Yes, it is the story about the crew and passengers of a British Airways 737 who had to get out and push the plane across the tarmac at Rome Airport in order for it to leave. British Airways are keen to point out that there was at no time any risk to those pushing the plane, and that almost all the economy passengers managed to jump back in before it took off. A couple of months ago, the BBC cancelled 2 documentaries that were critical of British Airways and even insisted on having a statement from this programme edited out of one of them. And in case you missed it, that statement went as follows. Now, where the hell did that go? It was here. Which in-flight entertainment hastens the departure of this first round, and the scores are, unlike Sir Nicholas Scott, perfectly balanced at 4-all. Round 2 is always something of a lottery, by which I mean it's a brief period of immense anticipation reduced in seconds to profound disappointment by a load of balls. This week, its anti-climax takes the form of our What Happened Next round, 1 question per answer. So, what happened after this? You're watching BBC 2.
You're 76, you're sick, and you thought that the NHS would always provide.
That bloke said, no, I'm not 76.
Not actually the right answer.
Did some old bugger in the audience misunderstand what he said and just go and give him one? Did something fall over? On his head?
The set collapsed on his head.
It's,
and he said, come on!
He was startled because there was a kangaroo on a pogo stick going behind the camera, and he was so surprised he started coughing. And didn't stop coughing for a long time.
Well, it sounds an absurd suggestion. Let's have a look.
You're 76, you're sick, and you thought that the NHS would always provide. Forget universal provision if you're trying to get into Hillingdon Hospital in West London, which is refusing to take some elderly patients
You've seen the kangaroo.
referred by their doctor. The hospital says it has no choice because, excuse me, so many elderly people are clogging up its beds. A representative of doctors... excuse me.
The bloke on the right, it's his kangaroo.
Always happens at the worst time.
They should have said at the end, it's a good job I'm not 76 and live in Hillingdon.
Do you think those 2 people would have just let him choke?
They weren't going to do anything.
Give him a pat on the back or something?
They were prepared.
They were health professionals, so I presume they would have done.
Have you been interviewed by Paxman? Is he very aggressive, do you think?
No, I don't mind being interviewed by him.
Controversial. The story being covered concerned the West London Hospital, which is refusing to treat patients over 75 years of age in its emergency department, which is a bit unfair, as most of them were in their mid-50s when they arrived there. Which short trail for the next programme brings us neatly to the end of this brief round, and the situation is that Ian and Mark have a tiny 4, whilst Paul and Nigel have an only slightly larger 6. And so to our universally reviled odd one out round, 1 ungainly foursome per panellist. Paul, your 4 this week are these 5. Sir Nicholas Scott, Camilla Parker Bowles, Mohammed Al-Fayed, and Richard and Judy.
Camilla Parker Bowles, is she the only one who's dropped a cigar in something nasty? Is there any clues involved in this?
If he
No.
doesn't know, I think it's to do with policemen being in trouble with the law.
In what way?
Well, I think Sir Nicholas Scott had a bit of bother earlier this week. He'd had a couple of really big painkillers. Great big painkillers. Anyway, he was found in the gutter. Now, Mohammed Fayed appears to be impersonating a police officer there. Well, he's been in trouble with... I didn't think it was the police, though. It was the Department of Trade.
So this police angle is quickly running out of steam. Has it got something to do with moving to London?
In what way?
Moving to London. Richard and Judy have famously moved to London, or not famously, moved. I don't know. Is there any point in me carrying on that particular line of inquiry?
Almost.
That's almost as pathetic as the police angle.
But not quite, and that's the difference between me and you, isn't it, Ian?
Sir Nicholas Scott, didn't he run into a toddler when he was parking his car in Chelsea?
Yeah.
Yes.
Another occasion when he'd had those painkillers. And he ran off without saying anything. And the woman in the car, who everyone stupidly assumed was his secretary, because he's a Conservative MP, started shouting at the toddler's parents, saying, "Get him away from the bumper."
You were nearer the first time, actually, when you were talking about being arrested by the police. It does have something to do with the
Not
police.
so pathetic, Mr. Merton.
Well, Richard was arrested for shoplifting, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Is that to do with the thing?
No, it isn't.
Right.
I'll tell you the answer, as...
You might as well.
It's going to
We're here.
take several days to get there, otherwise. The answer is that they've all been given police escorts, apart from Mohammed Al-Fayed, who has, however, sponsored a panda car to patrol Knightsbridge.
Really? Looking out for Egyptians trying to bribe MPs, presumably.
Outrageous slur. Yes, that's the Metropolitan Police, brought to you by Harrods. The Harrods-sponsored...
How did they get it round the counters? In and out of the lift must be a hell of a job.
In order to get to their studios in time, Richard and Judy were given a police escort past a 15-mile traffic jam on the M62, unlike the thousands of less fortunate people who were condemned to hours of mindless tedium as they sat powerless in front of their television sets. Nigel, your
Yes.
bosom buddies are Michael Heseltine, Cecil Parkinson, Peter Mandelson, and Vanessa Phelps.
Is Cecil Parkinson the only one who successfully auditioned for the man in the advert, "That's Why the Lady Loves Milk Tray"?
No, it isn't.
What's Peter Mandelson doing in the bushes there? Is that a clue? Will you give us a clue?
I might give you a clue, unless Ian and Mark have got an idea.
I think he's just doing a bit of horticulture.
An idea is the answer to the
sorry,
question rather than what Peter Mandelson was doing in the bushes. Well, it's something to do with you, Nigel, actually.
You've been on all their shows.
What?
Except
What, the Michael
three who don't
Heseltine
have
show?
them.
The Cecil Parkinson show?
I've
You don't
never-
watch enough telly.
Gardening with Peter Mandelson?
No, they've all been on a diet, or else, except in the case of Vanessa Phelps, when she maybe needs to buy my diet book, price £12.99, a slip in all good shops.
The clue is more to do with what you wear in bed.
Do you wear anything in bed, particularly that would connect you with these people?
Only
wear a
in a very
nightshirt.
cold climate.
Only a very cold climate.
Right.
No. I wear a nightshirt.
Nightshirt.
Yeah, but I don't know what that's got to do with these people here.
The answer is that they've all given interviews in the BBC radio car in their pyjamas, except Peter Mandelson, which I believe you have as well.
Well, how would we know? It was on the radio.
Anyhow,
we went to
what on
get an
earth has
answer.
that got to do with me? I've never given an interview in a BBC radio car in my pyjamas.
Well, according to this article, I think it was in The Guardian.
Well, you don't believe anything you read in The Guardian, do you?
That is, of course, with the exception of Peter Mandelson, Labour's spin doctor, who simply changed his trousers. A Radio 4 researcher...
Tough questioning.
A Radio 4 researcher described his legs as skinny and hairy, although according to Mandelson they were golden brown, muscular and striding confidently towards a spectacular election triumph. In his days as Conservative Party chairman, Cecil Parkinson often gave interviews in his pyjamas, usually at 3 o'clock in the afternoon if he could get them back on fast enough. Mark, your rogues gallery comprises Neil Hamilton, Mark Bosnich, John Redwood and Freddie Starr.
Mark Bosnich. For some reason his name has been in the news just lately. For no other reason probably than this thing he did at some footy ground, where he did a Nazi salute to the crowd and he had to apologise. Freddie Starr, I've seen his comedy shows and, I imagine that he'd think that was funny, so I've got a feeling he may have done a Nazi salute in the name of humour. and had to apologise. Some TV channel probably had to apologise. I don't know these other blokes. I know John Redwood and the other bloke. They both look like they really are keen to do a Nazi salute.
Well, Hamilton actually got into trouble for doing one.
Did he?
He did.
The Reichstag.
It was a sort of boyish prank, student prank.
Oh, ouch. It was like an accident.
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove.
It's easily done.
Johnny Redwood looks a bit toey for a Nazi salute too, I might say.
Sorry, what was Toey again?
Like really keen.
Oh, keen. It was tense last time.
That is certainly the joy of the Australian language. So yeah, they've all done a Nazi salute, except John Redwood. He's dying to.
Which is completely toey. Right.
Right.
Well done. Yes, the answer is that they have all given the Nazi salute in public, except John Redwood, whose attempt to do a Vulcan salute came out like this. Suddenly makes John Major look competent. Freddie Starr bases part of his show on the antics of Adolf Hitler, goose-stepping, saluting and recreating that famous moment at the Nuremberg rally where Hitler ate Goering's hamster. And finally in this round, Ian, your unlikely bedfellows are Cliff Richard and Virginia Bottomley and Jim Callaghan and Margaret Thatcher.
Charming photos of them all. They're all looking very toey, aren't they?
They are, very toey.
I think this is a singing question, because Virginia Bottomley did that thing that Tory politicians always feel obliged to do at the conference, which is burst into unamusing song. And Cliff bursts into impromptu song. He sang Bachelor Boy at Wimbledon when it rained, and all those bachelor girls in the background joined in. Martina, all the lads. Callaghan, he sang a song.
There was I waiting at the church. He sang that.
And then Maggie, she sang a song once.
No, I don't think she did. I think she's your odd man out, but still, it's not for me.
Were you at the 1987 conference?
Yes, I spoke at it.
Because that was the one that she sang at. You've obviously wiped it from your memory.
You'll probably find out they've all done a radio interview with their hair parted from that side.
No, I will give it to Ian. The answer is that they've all sung solo at political conferences, except Sir Cliff Richard at Wimbledon. As the rain poured down, he entertained the crowd with such hits as Summer Holiday, Congratulations and Bachelor Boy. He was going to do Devil Woman, but realised it might suddenly cut back to Sue Barker in the studio. At this year's Tory conference, Heritage Secretary Virginia Bottomley ploughed through 3 verses of a Gilbert and Sullivan parody, which went something like this.
Just smile through your teeth and avoid policy, and you all could be rulers of the Labour Party.
How can you talk out of key?
Why is
Can we see some more of that?
No.
Oh, go on.
We had to burn the
There's
rest.
otherwise idea.
Which musical travesties act as a cataclysmic finale to this penultimate round, and the score is that Paul and Nigel have a base 6, whilst Ian and Mark are 2 short of a tenor with 8. And so, as Nicholas Scott would say, let's have another round. Our final missing words round, in this case, featuring as our guest publication this week the internationally renowned World Pumps. Incorporating Pumps, Pumpin', the definitive guide to the international fluid sealing industry. So let's kick off with Save the Earth, Eat What?
Jupiter.
No, more bizarre than that, really.
Eat pumps.
A turtle is the answer. The Amazon River turtle, to be precise, according to Professor Edward O. Wilson, currently lecturing at the Natural History Museum, if you're a turtle. Next, what on the internet?
Pump. Porn.
Horn.
Porn. Similar area. Porn.
Yes. You were right the first time. Pumps is in fact the right answer.
Oh, well, there we are.
Blair takes what behind the curtain?
Is it the Black Theatre of Prague? Do you remember them? They used to sort of like all dress in black. Oh, it doesn't matter.
No, I wish
Amyl
I did.
nitrate.
Mandelson?
Certainly not.
Takes a pump.
Labour policy.
None of
Takes
these.
a pump behind the curtain.
It could have happened.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. That's my answer as well.
No, I'm going to have to tell you, it takes a fleeting look behind the curtain is the answer. A look at a mother who'd just that second given birth, apparently. And what better time to be introduced to the Leader of the Opposition. Next, what pump?
Penis pump.
It's a very long...
Doesn't have to be one word.
It doesn't have to be one. No, it could
Oh,
be
doesn't it?
All the worlds are. Adaptation of Shakespeare.
All the world's a pump.
Yeah.
And all of us...
And we are but pumpers.
That's their slogan. You see it on the front page. Have you not read it?
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Well, what the world needs now is pump, sweet pump. Hydroelectric... Oh, I don't know.
No.
What's the point of even trying to guess, really?
Yeah, almost none, given that the answer is vertical mag drive pump. And lastly, Miller warns against what fudge?
Gun.
Is the right answer. Quick as a flash. Well done. That's the
I thought it
fastest
was
answer we've
pump.
ever had.
I thought it was pistachio. I hate that one.
I thought we needed a point.
We did.
Yes. Yes.
He hasn't lost that ability to count, has he?
Which virtuoso display of ignorance brings this contest to a merciful end. And the final verdict is that this week's sleazeballs are Ian and Mark with 9, whilst this week's bonus balls are Paul and Nigel with 10. And I leave you with news that after one joke too many about his bad driving, Mark Thatcher sets off to see his libel lawyer. As the train pulls out of Euston, a young girl puts on a brave face as she realises that the 6-hour journey to Glasgow could be even more tedious than usual. And at last, there's conclusive proof that misshapen vegetables simply aren't funny. Good night.